We have two absolutely huge stories to start with today, and I wasn't sure which to start with, but let's just start with the first one. We have now learned that Apple has given the Trump, or gave at the time, the Trump administration information and documents on Democratic lawmakers. And this is yet another attempted or real abuse of subpoena power to obtain documents about the political enemies of the Trump administration. And we also, of course, have to consider the role which Apple itself has played. Let's take a look at an article from Thomson Reuters, which says Apple on Friday said it has tightened some of its rules for responding to legal requests after the U.S. Justice Department during Donald Trump's presidency subpoenaed it for information on Democratic lawmakers. Apple said it recently instituted a limit of 25 identifiers, such as email addresses or phone numbers, per legal request. So far what they're saying is, if you're going to do this, you'll have to make multiple requests. You can't give us a list of 100 identifiers. You'll have to give us four lists of 25. The Cupertino, California-based company said it received a subpoena from the Justice Department in February 2018 for information on 109 identifiers made up of 73 phone numbers and 36 email addresses, but that it did not release content such as emails and pictures to prosecutors. The New York Times on Thursday reported, and we will get to that report, that federal prosecutors subpoenaed Apple and other companies as part of an investigation searching for the sources behind media news reports about contacts between Trump's associates and Russia. This is a key line. What was the point of this? What was it that the Trump administration, the Trump Justice Department, was seeking to find out in requesting this information? They were trying to uncover the sources, the journalistic sources for reporting about Trump administration contacts with Russia. Think back to when this was going on. And there were reports about Jeff Sessions said there were no contacts, but look at all these contacts that we found. Donald Trump said there were no contacts, the whole list of these people. So the Trump administration, through the Justice Department, said, hey, you know what? Let's start figuring out. Let's get information from people's iPhones and from the iCloud, whatever else was being used, right? Related to Apple or possibly being used. Let's see if we can figure out who the sources are or were for what these reports are claiming. Trump publicly saying, oh, anonymous sources. No, they're just bogus. But privately, they knew they weren't bogus, so much so that they were trying to figure out exactly who they were. Publicly saying, when you read anonymous source, doesn't exist. There's no real source. Privately understanding there are sources and trying to figure out exactly who those people are. The investigation targeted at least two Democrats on the House of Representatives Intelligence Committee, aides, and family members, including one minor, the New York Times reported. Apple said it had no way to tell what the nature of the investigation was and released only basic account subscriber information such as names, addresses, email addresses, phone numbers, as well as connection logs and IP addresses. Apple said it did not provide data showing to whom or when messages of any kind were sent. The New York Times then reporting the Justice Department subpoenaed Apple for information in February 2018 about an account that belonged to Donald F. McGahn II, President Donald J. Trump's White House counsel at the time. This is another wrinkle to this story. This is another aspect which we're still trying to figure out. For the most part, it seems what was going on here was an attempt to figure out who were the sources for the news media, presumably on the Democratic side, about these different contacts that the Trump campaign and administration had with Russians. But at the same time, the New York Times report points out that there was an attempt to get information about Donald Trump's lawyer as well. And the New York Times article says it was not clear what FBI agents were investigating, whether Mr. McGahn was their specific focus, or whether he was swept up in a larger net because he had communicated with someone who was under scrutiny. That's another important aspect to understand. There are some on the right saying this was not a partisan thing being done by Trump loyalists in the Justice Department looking for information only on Democrats. as evidenced by the fact that they were looking for information about Trump's own lawyer. What it may have been, and if it is, it's absolutely crazy, that there was some other person being scrutinized. Imagine that there was, just as a hypothetical, some Russian national that was sort of at the center of this. The Justice Department may have been saying, we need information on anybody who's been in touch with this person. And Apple may have seen a connection between McGahn and that individual. And so incidentally, McGahn may have been swept up on it. We just don't know at this point in time is the point. Now, meanwhile, as reported by CNN's Manu Raju, who tweeted over the weekend, quote, Barr, Sessions, and now Rosenstein say they were unaware of the subpoenas sent under their tenure for Democratic lawmakers' records. These are three people with a track record of dishonesty, first of all, so I wouldn't trust them much. But what seems to be going on here is that they are trying to get their stories straight for one-word answers if they're ever forced to testify. How? Nobody knew anything. All of these subpoenas were filed, but nobody knew who authorized them, who signed. We just don't know. The administration was granted years-long gag orders against these subpoenas, same as the others. These were gag orders that were renewed multiple times. What judge okayed the renewal of the gag order on the fact that these subpoenas were signed off on and granted? Which judge or judges were involved? Do we need to subpoena the subpoenas to figure out who is behind some of this stuff? It is an incredible story. It did not make the headlines I might have guessed it would have made, or that I would have hoped it would make, but a major story which we are going to continue following. One of the best ways that you can support what we do at the David Pakman Show is supporting some of our awesome sponsors. Today, one of those awesome sponsors is Sheath Underwear. A lot of us know all too well about the sticking and the rubbing and the chafing with traditional underwear, especially this time of year as the weather is getting warm. Sheath Underwear have created unique boxer briefs with multiple ergonomic compartments in the front, preventing skin-on-skin contact. Everything stays separate, comfortable, dry, and cool. No more sweatiness, no more chafing, no more readjusting. It's a lifesaver. Sheath Underwear is giving the David Pakman Show audience 20% off when you go to sheathunderwear.com/Pakman and use the promo code Pakman. Give Sheath Underwear a shot. I've had a great experience. I believe you will too. You can find the link underneath this video, and don't forget to use promo code Pakman for 20% off.